Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and today is the 5th of April, 2025. Another rather gray day here, which, again, typical of April at this time of year. Um, Apologies, I put this one together at the very last minute. I think people who are subscribed would have gotten the notification for this at the last minute because because I just remembered, at like 7:26 or so, or 7:25, I was like, oh, I don't think I've set this up. And hi, Kathleen, good morning. Yeah, I was, yesterday I skipped doing the live stream. I did not, well, I woke up in the morning, I didn't feel the greatest, and I don't know, I just kind of had this message of like, don't bother today, like just take a day off. Fortunately, I hadn't pre-scheduled one, so it was just easy to just send a notice out. Although I know there's a lot of people now who are not doing Facebook and Instagram, so they might not have gotten the notice. Leela, good morning. Good to see you. And yeah, so yesterday was a really, really difficult day. Now, I was supposed to go into New York City yesterday to go meet with Susie Groff, who is she's on the list of faculty for ISFM, and she's been a huge supporter of all my work. And she's working on a book now, like a speculative fiction book, and I've been editing it for her. And like I said, she's also she's been a big like financial supporter and stuff of Cattonia and stuff. And I like Susie a lot. She's just great. She's Austrian, and she lives in New York. And so we were going to get together. And last time we got together, we had a really great time. And I was really looking forward to going. But one of my infamous headaches just came crashing in. And sometimes if I head it off, it will subside. It won't be quite so bad, or it'll be tolerable. As I was getting towards the time I was going to have to get in the car and drive to the train station. Good morning, Suda. As I was getting into that point where I was going to have to drive to the train station, I realized this was not going to get better. And I messaged her and I'm like, I'm really sorry to cancel at the last minute. And I have a feeling she said, okay, no worries, we'll reschedule. She asked me to call her later in the day, which it was after 5. I made an effort to call, but I didn't get, I got her voicemail. So I assume she probably, called up another friend and went out, which is great because yesterday was an absolutely beautiful day in New York City. And it would have been a perfect day to go out. But no, I was so sick all day yesterday with that headache. And and again, I get a lot of times people will say like, oh, well, it's because of this and you should do this or you should do that. I've had these headaches for like 15 years now, and they just, when they come on, especially when they slam like both the stomach and the head at the same time, I don't know, they just seem to be, there's something that's going on there, and I'm not sure whether it has to do with the energies. I'm not sure if it has to do with hormones. I don't exactly know what it is, but when they happen, it's just all bets are off. I literally slept all afternoon, and I think I woke up a couple of different times. A friend of mine had texted because who works at FDU had their car slammed by a student in the parking lot, like literally, and then just parked. And student being, of course, in a lot where they're not supposed to be. So that came up yesterday. Yesterday was rather intense, and energetically, I had to go back and look at what was going on yesterday. By the way, I started to feel fine again around 2:00 in the morning. I fell asleep again, and it was just, and then when I woke up at 2 a.m., I was like, okay, I'm always a little, unsteady after those headaches, but now I feel better. I am doing the astrology class today. Right now, Ellen is the only one signed up. So it might end up being just a personal class between me and her. But if anybody still wants to join, you can message me after the live stream, and I can make sure that you get the Zoom link for it. But good morning. I've been asleep for days, is what Johanne's saying. Yeah, it's well, energetically, and I feel like I've talked to Sam recently, and she was also talking about feeling very, very exhausted during this time period as well. So astrologically, what seems to be going on, Flemington, good morning, have a blessed day. Oh, okay, great, and you're new. Okay, well, good morning and welcome. The topic I was thinking about today had to do with, okay, the big aspect that happened yesterday was Saturn and Uranus sextiling each other. And then they were in a trine with Mars. So Uranus, okay, so this this is an interesting aspect, and I found myself thinking about it. Now, mind you, when you have any kind of aspect between the outer planets, it tends to last for a very long time. The Mars trine will probably go away fairly quickly, but when you have this aspect between the outer planets, this one is supposed to last, like it peaked yesterday. You know, so when it peaked, it was, what you call it? What was a okay, so that was kind of the highest point of the conjunction, but it's supposed to still be around for another couple of years. So the effects of that sextile are, you know, we've reached the maximum point, and it's going to start to diminish, but it's going to take a couple of years to diminish because it's in that outside space. Now, that's an interesting aspect. And Saturn, Uranus, okay. So mythologically, you have to take a step back when we think about these influences, because we hear these kinds of things being thrown around all the time. You know, this planet connected with this planet and this and that, and what the heck does all of that mean? Well, okay, so mythologically, Uranus or Uranus, oh my God, I have a huge topic, some research direction on, we need to chat. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. You can message me. Like I said, today I'm doing that class at 11, but you know, we can figure that out. Do you think an asteroid will hit and obliterate everything? I think we're due for that soon. No, I actually don't think that, although I can totally understand why you would think such a thing, or maybe some people are even wishing for such a thing. But what's happening is that we have, okay, so this particular conjunction, Uranus is somebody who was the original king of the gods. Okay, you have void, you have chaos. Out of chaos comes the five. This is Greek mythology now. And good morning, Alistair. Morning/afternoon. It's good to see you. Okay, so when we talk about Uranus or Uranus, and this is, of course, Greek and Roman mythology. There are other world mythologies that cover this differently, but astrology tends to kind of go along those lines. At least Western tropical astrology does. Uranus is the original king of the gods. You have, coming out of chaos or void, you have Erebus, you have Tartarus, you have Nyx, you have Eros, and then you have Gaia. Okay, and out of Gaia, interesting, it could be a possibility though. Well, they are talking about an asteroid that's going to come pretty close in a couple of years, but yeah, I don't know. But in any case, when you have this, okay, so Uranus is the original king of the gods, and Uranus comes out of Gaia and immediately begins to mate with Gaia. So it's interesting that the sky comes out of the earth in Greek mythology, something to think about there. He's one of the children of earth, and then begins to mate with the earth, which happens all through mythology. You have, you know, siblings, children, whatever, mating with each other, because really we're dealing with natural forces. We're not dealing with actual individuals. If you think of them like they're people, then you kind of go, ew, that's weird. But it's not, you're not talking about people here. You're talking about forces. So, okay, Uranus is the original king of the gods, and Uranus astrologically is connected, again, more recent astrology, because original astrology that you had in the, you know, between the Babylonians and the Greeks and everything, and maybe even Vedic astrology in India, you don't have any planets past Saturn, okay, because those, the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and of course Pluto, which we use, which, you know, again, there's the astronomical Pluto and how people say, well, that's not as important and whatever, but certainly astrologically, Pluto is now in Aquarius, and that seems to be having a big, larger impact there. And Pluto in Aquarius, okay, so Uranus is a later planetary ruler who comes in, and Uranus actually rules Aquarius, as does Saturn. Now, Saturn is the child of Uranus, okay, or Kronos in the Greek. Is one of the children of Gaia and Uranus. So, okay, when we talk about Saturn Uranus, we're talking about a father-son relationship. Okay, father-son. And it's a father-son relationship within a myth of succession. A myth of succession meaning that the son conquers the father. Okay, and that's, you know, the initial Greek myths are actually all about that. You have Kronos, who really, well, what he does is he emasculates his father. The way that story goes is that Uranus comes every night to mate with the earth, and the children they produce are these giants, these monsters, the Hecatoncheires, which are the 100-handers. You know, they're producing all of these monsters, because these are the titanic forces of the earth. These are the these kind of giant monstrous forces. If you want to think about them as personifications of the way in which, you know, plate tectonics move, and earthquakes, and volcanoes, and all this kind of, you know, raw, powerful energy that if you're in the path of it, you're probably toast. But it's, you know, it's this energy that we have that is these kind of building blocks of the energy and that come out of chaos and that become like the raw material that allow us to build a life or a civilization as we have. And a lot of the way these myths work is the idea that you have these battles between gods, and the gods that are battling the next generation of gods are the ones that are trying to impose order on chaos. Okay, so this is kind of the thing that goes on. Now, what happens is Uranus continually does not like his children, so he keeps stuffing them back into Gaia. He wants to hide them. He thinks, ooh, they're ugly, I don't like them. And he keeps pushing them back into basically the womb. And again, if we want to try to have a visual for that, as one of my grad school, well, she actually was my dissertation director, had said, she said, well, just try to imagine that you have that a woman is giving birth and the husband's like, oh, I don't like this kid, and keeps trying to stuff it back inside the mother. That's kind of what goes on here. And Gaia is, of course, very distressed about this and says to her kids, who are all with her, she's like, okay, who's going to deal with dad here? Because I can't deal with this. So Kronos stands up, or Saturn, and goes, oh, I'll do it. So she gives him this sickle, this very sharp sickle. So when Uranus comes to visit, boom, you know, we won't describe. You can probably picture for yourself what happens. But in any case, his manhood falls into the ocean, and it foams up. And out of the foam, in addition to a bunch of other giants and things, comes the goddess Aphrodite. Okay, she comes floating out. That picture, the Botticelli of her floating out on the conch shell, and, you know, with the long blonde hair. Yeah, that's her floating out after Uranus, you know, gets unmasculated, shall we say. And it falls, so she is born out of the foam. In fact, Aphrodite literally means the foam born. So yeah, so this is our ideas. And so there's a lot that you could unpack there about the connections between the forces that create the universe and that create order and desire. Right? You could think about that. But okay, so you've got these two forces. So let's just say that, like, even astrologically, Uranus and Saturn don't really like each other very much. Saturn tends to be about order. Now, mind you, Saturn immediately, okay, so when he creates this separation between sky and earth, when they no longer mate with each other, there's a separation. He is the god of time, so don't forget that. That's a separating of time. And as soon as you have time, you have the building blocks of order, because you have the building blocks of measurement. We measure everything in terms of time. Okay, and this is why I say creation mythology primarily has to do with death, because or the fact that death happens, that we are mortal, that there is a limit to things. As soon as you start measuring things, you can't measure what's limitless and infinite. I mean, not really. I mean, you can come up with some kind of numbers that your brain can't conceptualize, but you can't really measure that. So we're breaking things down into what's measurable. So Saturn, traditionally in astrology, has had to do with that initial ordering principle, that principle of ordering around time. But so what does Saturn do as soon as his children start to be born? He does not want anyone to succeed. He's overthrown his father. Now, he doesn't want anyone overthrowing him, so he starts taking his children and swallowing them. Now, think about the idea of being swallowed by time. This is kind of the idea of being affected by death, or life not being allowed to happen because things are continually being swallowed. So what ends up happening here is that you know, there again, Rhea, his wife, gets a little irritated with every time she gives birth, her husband swallowing their child. So she decides, when she gives birth to Zeus, that she gives Kronos a stone to swallow. She kind of wraps it up and gives it to him, and he swallows it. Doesn't pay any attention, no difference. And Zeus is kind of hidden away under the earth with the dactyls, and they kind of make all kinds of loud noise under the earth. These kind of dwarf-like underworld creatures. That's a whole separate story. But to keep him from hearing the infant Zeus crying and so forth. So Zeus grows up, and of course Zeus is now going to challenge his father. And this is what we call the Titanomachy. There's this battle between Zeus and Kronos, and Zeus eventually wins the battle. But Kronos is not destroyed. Time is not destroyed in this battle. Kronos becomes the king of the first golden age. Okay, Saturn becomes the king of the first golden age. And indeed, in Roman mythology, where Saturn as a deity probably had his own attributes, but once the Romans started to adopt Greek mythology, he became equated with Kronos. But the Saturn of Roman mythology has a lot more to do with agriculture, okay, with growing and with the possibility of things growing on Earth. And indeed, Saturn is connected with the Golden Age. I mean, and he becomes in the underworld. We talk about the different parts, talk about Hades, and you talk about Tartarus, which are the depths, but then you talk about the Elysian fields, which a lot of people try to equate with heaven. It's not really the same thing. But it's the idea that, because you're not an immortal soul there, you are just a, it's like what your remnants of you get to, the shade of you gets to exist in a place that's nicer than just the general gloomy, whatever of living in the cavernous underworld. But Saturn is the king of the Elysian fields. So because he has to do with that idea of kind of pleasure and abundance within this space that is kind of roped off by time, so to speak. It's almost like you're living in a memory in this place, in a manner of speaking, in the Elysian fields. But it's a pleasant one, it's where the heroes go when they pass away. And so you have this Saturn-Uranus thing that's going on. So what does this have to do with the astrology? Well, when you have Saturn and Uranus working together, Saturn tends to represent authority, traditional authority. He's associated with the 10th house, right? Capricorn energy, that idea of worldly recognition, worldly status, governments, order. And also Saturn tends to be a bit of a taskmaster. It's like if you're going to build something, you're talking about Saturn being connected to the building blocks of things. It's like there's an ordering principle that has to go on here. We're putting things in order. And that can take time. Think about if you're putting a house together, or if you have a builder who is going to put a house together in, they just get some materials and you slap something together and you throw it up in like a week or something. And you think, and it may look nice, but then when you actually move into it, then you start to see, where the cheap materials are, where it rains and the walls crack and the windows and so forth. You can think of Saturn as being the influence that says, no, you need to kind of start over and do it right. You need to do it the right way. And so you need to do things. Saturn is about taking your time and doing it right. Okay, doing things. So this is why Saturn returns sometimes often have to do with correction, the way in which we have to go back and maybe revisit. And maybe it's something we don't want to revisit. Maybe it's something we're tired of. Maybe it's just like, oh, another obstacle or whatever. But these are obstacles that tend to come to us because they are, it's meant to say to us, well, like, no, something's not quite right here. You need to adjust it. You need to fix it. Or in some cases, it just needs to go away. Saturn can also be associated with reaping, with the harvest, right? So he ends up having this association with death. And again, as the king of time, that does make sense. That he can be associated with father time in particular. Like, you remember the whole thing about the baby new year, father time, handing over the crown of the old year to the baby new year. Like, there's that little kind of folklore that you will see. The idea that he represents the end of the old year. And it's kind of interesting that right now Saturn is in Pisces, which is the end of the cycle, and is getting ready to move into Aries. So so right now we have this sextile aspect between the two. And so you have this energy. Uranus tends to be associated with more chaotic energy. And I guess you could look at it mythologically as Uranus is this being that exists before there's order. Okay. It represents this kind of, this principle of being over this world that has to do with order. It has to do more with chaos, because when Uranus comes in, when the influence of Uranus comes in astrologically, it's a great awakener. It wakes everything up. It creates a lot of tumult when Uranus comes in. But the idea is that of, again, kind of has this idea of ripping away what's old. Of opening up what is, tearing down. Again, it seems to have this kind of similar function of tearing things down that don't belong. although Saturn can probably be seen as trying to build something that's going to last, being more associated with that. So you kind of can see some of the mythological connections there. Now, the interesting thing about the sign of Aquarius is that it's ruled traditionally by Saturn, and after we discovered the outer planets, it's ruled by Uranus. I thought about that this morning. I was like, okay, we're in this age that is Pluto and Aquarius, and now we've got Pluto, and now we've got this sextile between the rulers of Aquarius, okay, while Pluto is in Aquarius. So this has a lot of potential. Now, to be trine Mars, okay, Mars is the god of war, right? Aries or Mars is the god of war. But also a deity that has to do with action, with movement. It's just kind of, it's that drive, it's that machine that we move forward and we just do certain things. But Mars can also bring conflict. But when you're in a sextile or a trine aspect, you're actually bringing out the best aspect of all of those planets. So what does this end up meaning for us? Well, Saturn working with Uranus, to heighten these kind of Aquarian kind of things, you actually have this energy of being able to highlight the more forward-thinking aspects of Aquarius, because Aquarius can be about people having like a hive mind. It can be about emotional detachment, and there's like a coolness to Aquarian energy that is possible, but it is also a humanitarian energy. It's about the collective. It's about coming together. It's about support. It's the 11th house, right? It's really traditionally Saturn rules both the 10th and the 11th house. Okay. And but this is more about what's good for the collective, what's good for the group as a whole, not just for us individually. Anything that you're dealing with, like I've said, beyond the 6th house, has to do with the 6th house a little bit, because it does have to do with your service, service to others. But you're kind of moving into this space where we're talking about the collective now, not like the first 5 to 6 houses where we're dealing with us as individuals. Or us just in our local community. So this is about, expanding our horizons. It's about manifesting destiny. It's about all this stuff. Interesting sextile, 6 planets together. No, sextile actually has to do with the way in which if there's a trine or a sextile. I forget the exact degrees now. I'm teaching this class today, and I can't quite. I'm trying to remember the numbers, but it's like there's one is like one's like a 90-degree angle and one is another angle. It's a matter of, it's a calculation of the angle of the 2 planets to each other. And trine is one, as sextile is another, and the numbers are not coming to me right now. But it has to do with the angle of those planets with respect to each other. And it's considered to be a harmonious one. It can create kind of this trine or whatever. Sorry if I'm mistaken, I'm trying to understand. No, it's okay. No, that's fine. It's just that, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, because when you hear trine and sextile, you kind of might think, you're thinking of the number 6, right? You're thinking of there's these different 6s, but the 6 has to do with the calculation. And just off the top of my head, I'm not remembering it. I have to look in my, like I said, I'm doing this presentation today at 11. So that's something, and I'm not remembering the number off the top of my head, because numbers are not something that I tend to retain, but they both are aspects where they're like maybe 2 houses away from each other, and then the others, they might be not 6 houses away from each other with a sextile. It's more like they're like 4 houses away from each other. But there's the thing. Got it. Thanks. Yeah. So there's this aspect here. And so you have a trine and you have sextiles, but regardless, they're considered to be extremely positive. Okay. And so to me, this is a very hopeful kind of an energy, because it suggests that the Saturn-Uranus energy, which, because we can think of Uranus as creating these kinds of eruptions, these earthquakes, these tearing away the fabric of what we know, right? But you have it with Saturn, who's about saying, okay, no, we now need to, in this tearing down, we need to create some kind of a structure, because you need to organize it in a way that you can do something with me. And Joanne says it's all math to me. It's this, the way in which we have this structure that we are trying to build. But this kind of gets back to what I had said about the one of okay, the view, the sort of the occultist's view of demonology is the idea that you are talking about these kinds of primal forces that you can build stuff with if you know how to build with it. So yeah, there's almost this idea that in this tearing down and in the chaos, there's all of this stuff that's coming down, and it's like, okay, now there's a restructuring. And with Mars, okay, Mars energy always adds action to things. It allows us to actually move forward and do stuff. When you're in a Piscean space, you're kind of like, I don't know, it's you can imagine things, but it's more like the person who's the visionary who never gets, who has an idea on paper but never can actually come up with the steps to manifest it. Adding Mars to the mix creates this more action-oriented kind of way of thinking. And also Mars rules Aries. So this has to do with moving us towards something new, towards the new cycle. And I think it's nice to think of the fact that Saturn and Uranus are working together in the new cycle. And Pluto is there as well. So there's a lot of very, very strong dynamics going on here. But the fact that they are harmonious with each other when they're square or opposite to each other, that's a problem. When there's all of this opposition and all of this difficulty, it's a problem. And so to see a harmonious aspect, I think when we talk about this future, we talk about Neptune just moved into Aries, at least for the first time, and then we're going to have Saturn moving into Aries. When we have all of these kinds of aspects that are moving us towards something new, the question always becomes, which way is this going to go? Because Neptune in Aries can indicate, like, you know, a new spiritual awakening or a new opening. Neptune in Aries also happened like when the Nazi Party took over. You know, like, which way is this going to go? Are we going to all like fall in line, you know, become afraid and fall in line between like an authoritarian regime or do something like that? Or are we going to manage to, you know, are we going to manage to do something new and different with this? Are we going to maybe be able to structure something, you know, a new world out of the chaos that is going to be more Aquarian in the sense of being beneficial to humanity, thinking about humanity as a whole rather than what we think of as, you know, Pluto being in Capricorn, kind of being this energy of ambition and rising to the top and reputation and status and you know, me making my mark in the world, me competing with other people, me having to, you know, you're fighting your way, clawing your way to the top, right? In a more I mean, that would be in a negative sense, but and when Pluto goes anywhere, it can show you where, you know, what you have to be careful of, okay, when you're using these energies, because certain things can, there's always a shadowy side to everything, even things that we think of as ideally kind of positive. So I don't know. I think that is a very good, I think it's a very good omen that, you know, you have these kinds of energies working together. And I think that this is an energy that is going to allow us to be able to actually build something new and build something that is more in line with Aquarian values, which is about, you know, about innovation and about the way we can take the resources we have, or we can take the place that we are and do something that is of benefit to people rather than just benefiting a handful of people while everybody else, you know, struggles along. So yeah, so I don't know. So we'll see what comes of all of that. I was going to tell people I had some very funny dreams last night, and you can make what you want of this dream, but I had okay, there were two parts to it, but the second part of it was like, you remember this Saturday Night Live has like TV Funhouse. It's like the cartoon. And I think, is it Bob Smigel? Is that his name? I can't remember. I think he's the one who does these cartoons, but it was this kind of a cartoon, but it was like a plane, and like Trump was on the plane, and it was like the Archangel Raphael was flying this plane. Of course, it was like this cartoon. And Trump was just talking, because if you were to watch those cartoons, it's just a person and they're just kind of talking and doing their thing. And then somebody else is usually and that's what he, like, Raphael kind of looks over at him, kind of with this side eye, and then just like hits this button and ejects him straight out of the plane. So it was really funny. I just woke up kind of laughing. again, I don't know that that's prophetic of anything, but I just thought it was interesting that that kind of came up. Because, I associate Raphael with the East, and with the, if you do like a LBRP or something, you kind of have this, what you call it, your Eastern, when you invoke the angels of the East, that's going to be Raphael, and that's going to be his energy. So again, talking kind of about these new beginnings. So I don't know what that ends up having to do with or not. But it was kind of a funny dream. I also dreamt about my grandmother last night, which was kind of weird. And it occurred to me that there's like this family pattern of nines, as I want to call them, because my mother's mother died when my mother was only 9, and her mother was 27 when she passed away. And then but I tend to forget that my father's mother, who I also dreamt about last night, my grandmother, and it was interesting because it was like I was like a librarian going to be doing like a reference desk shift or something. And I was coming to the desk and my grandmother was there. Like she was going to be doing like, they were like letting her, she was very old at that point, and they were like going to let her do an hour just to like be nice or something. And my grandmother was never a librarian, by the way, but she was just there. I was like, oh, it's grandma. And she was smiling. And most of the time, I mean, my grandma was like that when I was growing up, but my sisters dreamt of her, and she's very, she's just kind of very unsmiling in all the dreams that my sisters had of her. But she was smiling, but she was very tiny. Like I stood, and it was like I towered over her. I was like twice her height, which was kind of interesting. I'm looking down and I'm like, oh, hi, grandma. But my grandma, when she was 9 years old, lost her father. Her father died at the age of 40 from wood alcohol poisoning. That was back in the days of Prohibition, and the good Irishmen had to have their whiskey, right? But he had, I guess they had drank this bathtub whiskey or gin or something, and the whole group of them, because there was a lawsuit. That's how my grandmother's family got the house that they got. Like they got the house of the guy who sold the bathtub gin, who I guess went to jail after that, obviously, because he ended up killing like a huge number of people. But I forgot that. I said, yeah, what they both had in common was they both lost their own parents, a parent. It's interesting. Yeah. At the age of 9. And, my grandmother, yeah, she worked for many years. Like I guess, I feel like she must've had a high school diploma or the equivalent but she started work at the age of 9. Those days they didn't have child labor laws. So yeah, she worked in like, I think a box factory or something. She did something there and there were 9 children in that family. So yeah, there's this whole thing around these 9s. And, so yeah, I don't know. It was just it was just kind of an interesting thing that had come up. And I was like, I wonder what that's about. But anyway, we don't need to sit here and talk about that. I wanted to do a couple things in terms of readings this morning. Since we're talking about the astrology of Uranus and Saturn and so forth, I thought we would do these this morning and pull and see what we get. And then if we have time at the end, we'll do our regular Osho Zen reading that people have come to know, love, and expect from this live stream. So let's see what we have. This we'll talk about this aspect and what it means for what we can expect it to mean for us, in terms of everything. So let's see what we have. Okay, this is interesting. So we're starting with the 11th house card. Okay, and they call this the House of Friends. And we were just talking about the 11th house and Aquarius in the 11th house. Now, when you come up with the card of Friends, this has to do with the way in which people support each other. Okay, this has to do with, it can have to do with all the other 11th house things, our destiny, how we manifest what our hopes and wishes are, but also whatever, I don't know. Again, I'm not a person who necessarily believes that life has a purpose per se in the broadest sense. But as humans with our consciousness, we need a kind of a purpose. And this may be something, people will say, okay, your soul decides this beforehand or whatever. Certainly your astrological chart seems to imply a direction that you're actually taking. So the question is, how are you moving in that direction? But this is also about the world, their social networks. This is about the wider world, how we connect with the collective, right? So this seems to be the center point here. And it's in the environment of the lunar eclipse, okay? Now, the lunar eclipse is, now, of course, we've had a lunar eclipse within the last month, but the lunar eclipse card has to do, the eclipse cards in general have to do with changes that we are not expecting. Lunar eclipse changes tend to be more immediate rather than more long-term. Because a solar eclipse, usually they say if you have a solar eclipse, you'll see changes unfolding over a 6-month period of time. And maybe to a certain degree, that could be true of lunar eclipses as well. I have just heard that they tend to have more immediate results. But nonetheless, there seems to be something here with this lunar eclipse card that seems to indicate there is some kind of, there's some kind of a big change afoot. But we're talking the lunar eclipse rather than the solar eclipse. So this is when, you know, the moon kind of, you know, turns that kind of reddish color. It's like it kind of in the shadow, you know, of the earth. And so, yeah, so to me, looking at it more as a lunar rather than a solar thing, I don't know. Now, of course, I have talked about how I've gotten this message about the associations of the sun and moon flipping, and that the moon is now masculine and the sun is now feminine. So I don't know if that plays in here or not. But nonetheless, we definitely have this idea of change, of collective change, of change to the wide world, to the people who are in our network, to the people who we are supporting, right? And towards our ability to move towards our destiny. Ooh, the blood moon. Haha, yeah. Yeah, right. It was the blood moon eclipse. You're right. Yeah, and it actually did. I remember walking out at 2 a.m. at the height of the eclipse, which I know it's really funny because, like, weirdly, according to Vedic astrology, you were never supposed to go out and look at an eclipse, and I just can't help myself. So I went outside at 2 a.m. It was really clear, and you could really, it was like right over my house, really big. I was like, whoa, big full moon that was red, and it looks really cool. Okay, so what are we not seeing here? 6th house. Okay, so what does 6th house have to do with this? Is that Dosthana house? This is one of the ones that, which is one of the houses that kind of brings worry or woe, at least in Vedic astrology. That's the idea. But 6th house is the house of routine, okay? This is called the card of routine. And, okay, so 6th house is Virgo. 6th house is, again, we're talking about ordering principles, right? I see you towering over her. You exceeded her expectations of what she hoped for her generation. She's happy about your choices, breaking the chain of change. Oh, cool. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for that impromptu dream analysis there. Yeah, there seems to be something about that. And the fact that she's kind of like this token person and I'm taking over the rest of the shift, which I thought was kind of interesting too. Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure she'd be happy about that at that point. But yes, but thank you for that. Appreciate that. So 6th house, we're talking about routine. So yeah, what are our routines? What are our habits? What are the things that how do we define order? Right? Virgo is about how we define order because Virgo is neat and could be, you know, at its more persnickety, it can be more perfectionist. But Virgo energy. Now, also remember the South Node is in Virgo right now. So this is kind of about how we are cleaning up, how we're wrapping up, how we're looking at our routines. And when this card shows up, it's usually about our routines being broken in some way. There's something that's going to change it. Now, remember the 6th house is also the house of worry. Didn't mean to be rude, but came in at 200. No, you're not being rude at all, Joanne. That was great. That was interesting. Thank you. And thank you. I always appreciate when other people's guides kind of come in and do reinforcement. So the 6th house, yeah, it's this energy of, yeah, like kind of what we're accustomed to, what's routine. It does have to do with our physical health. So there may be emphasis on physical health for some of us in terms of making sure that we are, you know, we are taking care of ourselves in that way. But 6th house also is kind of like, I want to feel like it's this energy of just, yeah, like where we might be perfectionist, where we might be worrying. And I think that with respect to the 11th house, I think a lot of that may have to do with how we appear to other people. Are we perfect enough for other people, or are people going to judge us for not being perfect in some kind of a way? Because sixth house also has to do with service, what we're doing for humanity, right? I mean, it could be about how people are serving us, but it's also how are we serving them. And the fact that this card shows up in connection with Aquarius tells me this may be a little bit more about the way in which we serve each other. Okay, this may have a little bit to do, and that may be the aspect that we're not seeing right now. But I also think this means there's kind of a disruption of routine. So what's our advice card? Mercury retrograde. Okay, now Mercury retrograde, I mean, yeah, we're in it right now, and it has been a doozy of one. It actually ends on tomorrow, Monday-ish, it ends. I forget. Some people say it's the 6th, the 7th, probably the night of the 6th. Yeah, we ushers again. Doc wanted me to lose 20, which to me calculates to 100. Yeah, it's yeah, I know. There's kind of a, well, yeah, that's another subject I could get onto when I'm kind of going, you know, yeah. Anyway, you're right, having to do with health, and yeah. So Mercury retrograde here, I feel like, yeah, because Mercury retrograde, it's okay. The word on this card is reinvention, right? It's about how are we reinventing things? How are we looking at things? Mercury is interesting in astrology because in a lot of these planetary geometries, he's considered to be the agitator or the instigator. Like when Mercury moves into a certain position, everything takes off. So Mercury retrograde right now, the fact that Mercury's slowing down, moving backwards with Venus, of course, right now, it's almost like this retrograde has been about, it's winter coating. Mercury retrograde is about this way in which we are, there's that correction energy, right? It's the way that we're kind of stopping and looking at things. But Mercury retrograde, okay, what's kind of coming into my mind is also the fact that we are not necessarily receiving correct information at this time because it scrambles the signal. We're not getting things very, very clearly. Okay. And so we may be feeling like we can't move forward, maybe feeling like we can't do certain things, or we're not understanding certain things. Venus changes on the 12th to the 13th. Yeah. It's, yeah, that Venus will go direct again. Of course, they take a while to get going again. You've got that post-shadow period, but still, I will be very glad when these retrogrades are over because these have been a doozy. But yeah, this is what we're doing. This is this reinvention that's going on. And honestly, yeah, I just feel like, okay, remember what we've been saying about be careful what you believe during retrograde right now. Oh, it's cold as up here. Yeah, it's, well, it's going to get cold down here again, too. So that's probably going to be even worse where you are. Yeah, so Mercury retrograde. Yeah, don't believe everything you hear right now. Don't believe everything you hear because there is going to be some kind of a sudden change, and it's not necessarily going to be the same old here. We are moving towards this space of our destiny, and our outcome here is fire element. Okay, so where do we, yeah, and it's interesting that they're showing like a trine here because Mars is actually trine with a lot of this energy right now, at least for now. I don't think that's going to be a long-term trine, but nonetheless, there's going to be this energy, this Aries energy, as these planets start to shift out of Pisces and into Aries, and as these retrogrades go direct again, things are going to clear up, and then this is going to be about action. This is about how we're going to be able to move. Your $3,000 duties. You felt this sudden change of energy is what Sudo was saying. Yeah, there's a big shift that's going to be coming on here, and as messy as things are right now, it does seem like there is going to be this shift, you know, about where things are going to be going. We've got 1 minute. I'm just going to throw these out quickly and see how this corroborates with this. And let's just see, yeah, we're talking about this, this particular sextile. I'm curious what sudden change. Yeah, I know. Me too, actually. Be interested to see what this is all about. Okay, so our first card here is trust, right? It's telling you to trust in things. Now, the inner feeling, which would go unaware, there's our 9, is the aloneness card, which is the Hermit. So the Hermit, okay, if we're talking about Saturn, remember what I said about kind of the old man, there's this sense that we are coming to an end and we are reflecting on things. We are looking back on where we've been. We're looking for where our own light is, right? Jeremy got the Death Wish chocolate cherry coffee. I'm not a fan. Oh, so yeah, this is about how we shine our own light. And externally, we've got the 5 of Wands, the totality card. And that's now, what is 5 of Wands normally? It's about the competition, right? The games people play, the things that distract us, that pull our energy away. So yeah, there's a lot of this right now, but the 5 of Wands says it's not that serious. It's not as serious as it appears to be, which I know is kind of like, we're all kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. But there's a sense here that we need to trust where this is going. So we have the Chariot again. Okay, the Chariot's Cancer energy, but it is about movement. And it's also that card of awareness, about being aware of what's real. Okay. And ultimately we have the Flowering card. So I feel like, yeah, what we're being drawn towards here is away from the external noise and competition to kind of go in and find, no, like your inner illumination is going to be the thing that shows you the correct path when you're having a hard time distinguishing between what's going on in the collective and how it affects you, or how other people are responding to you and yourself. Thanks, Brigid. Powerful topic. Yes, I'd like to slow down on change. Well, yeah, actually, Azrael's told me today that I really should have a day where I'm not, as he puts it, a day of kwasa, which is pleasure, have a day of pleasure. So yeah, the end is beautiful. Wow, wonderful reading. Yes, it is. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot to be hopeful for, I think. And I understand too, that doesn't mean that we're all necessarily out of the woods on everything, but nonetheless, there's definitely this idea of just trust us. This is going somewhere good. So yeah. So anyway, thank you guys so much. It'll be worth the pain. I hope so. Yeah. It'll be. I guess it all is a matter of perspective. But yeah, I think we're going through a restructuring right now, and right now, what's happening? Well, again, I guess it's like a construction site, right? The mess of things is not indicative of what the final product's going to look like. So I guess we'll see. Anyway. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm not going to be on tomorrow. I've decided I'm taking Sundays off, so I will be back Monday morning. Like I said, if anybody still wants to join me for astrology today, you're welcome to do that, but just message me after this so I can get you a link. And otherwise, I will see you guys on Monday.